Think you belong here, lucky girl? Lila Voss's venomous voice sliced through the smoky air of the Golden Ace Casino in Las Vegas. The 27-year-old heiress, her white dress glittering under neon lights, sneered at Zara Kane, a 32-year-old black fintech CEO seated at the high-stakes poker table. Enraged by Zara's poised confidence, Lila grabbed her intricately braided hair, yanking it viciously, sparking roars of laughter from the surrounding crowd. Phones flashed, capturing the humiliation, as Zara's piercing gaze held steady. The room pulsed with cruel delight, but something unspoken flickered in her eyes, a storm brewing beneath her calm. Would her next move shatter the empire Lila's father built? Vote 1 if this grips you, 0 if it doesn't. Stay tuned for a reckoning that flips the table. The Golden Ace Casino pulsed like a living beast, its Las Vegas heart throbbing with neon pinks and electric blues that bled across the polished marble floor. Chandeliers dripped with crystals, scattering light like shattered stars over the high-stakes poker table where Zara Kane sat, a vision of unyielding grace. At 32, the black CEO of Kane Corp, a fintech empire, commanded attention without a word. Her long, straight hair cascaded to her waist, gleaming under the lights, framing a cream bodycon dress, short, curve-hugging, with a square neckline cinched by a delicate drawstring at her chest. The dress's ruched sleeves and sensual simplicity amplified her elegance, each movement a quiet declaration of power. Her dark eyes scanned the poker chips, her fingers steady, betraying none of the storm she sensed brewing. The table was a battlefield of egos, tycoons, celebrities, and sharks in tailored suits, their laughter sharp as the clink of whiskey glasses. Among them sat Amir Jackson, a 40-year-old venture capitalist with a sly grin, his eyes flickering between Zara and the cards. Across the room, Clara Bell, a 28-year-old cocktail waitress with a weary smile, balanced a tray of drinks, her gaze lingering on Zara with a mix of awe and envy. The air thrummed with jazz from a distant quartet, but the real music was the rustle of chips and the murmur of bets, a symphony of greed and ambition. Lila Voss, 27, daughter of casino mogul Victor Voss, slithered into view like a serpent in white satin, her dress glittering with sequins that caught the neon glow. Her platinum blonde hair swung as she leaned against the bar, sipping a martini, her blue eyes narrowing at Zara. Envy coiled in her chest. Zara's effortless command of the room, her beauty, her reputation as a fintech titan who turned markets with a whisper, it all burned Lila's pride to ash. She whispered to her entourage, a gaggle of trust fund heirs in bespoke suits, their laughter already cruel. "Who let her in?" Lila hissed, loud enough for heads to turn. "Some lucky nobody thinking she's one of us?" Zara's lips twitched, not quite a smile, as she placed a bet, her voice low but clear. "Raise 10,000. The table hushed, respecting her play, but Lila's sneer grew sharper. She pushed off the bar, her heels clicking like gunfire on the marble, and strode to the table. The crowd parted, sensing a spectacle. Amir raised an eyebrow while Clara froze, her tray trembling. "Think you belong here, lucky girl?" Lila's voice cut through the jazz, venomous and deliberate, her words a blade aimed at Zara's heart. Zara met Lila's gaze, unflinching, her eyes like polished obsidian. She didn't answer, letting the silence speak, but Lila wasn't here for silence. With a viper's speed, she reached across the table, her manicured fingers snatching Zara's long hair, yanking it up and down with vicious force. Strands snapped, the pain sharp and searing as Zara's head jerked. The crowd erupted, laughter, gasps, and cheers from Lila's sycophants, their phones flashing to capture the humiliation. "Look at her!" Lila crowed, tugging harder, her martini sloshing. "A cheap dress and a lucky streak don't make you a queen." Chips scattered like frightened birds, a glass tipped, spilling amber whiskey across the green felt. Clara gasped, stepping back, her tray clattering, while Amir's jaw tightened, his hand pausing mid-bet. The room was a circus now, a gladiatorial pit where Zara was the prey, her cream dress a stark contrast to the chaos. Yet her hands remained steady, gripping the table's edge, her posture unbroken. The pain in her scalp was fire, but her eyes burned hotter, locking onto Lila's with a defiance that silenced a few onlookers. Their laughter faltered, sensing something untamed beneath her calm. "You don't belong here," Lila spat, releasing Zara's hair with a flourish, as if discarding trash. She turned to the crowd, arms spread, basking in their cruel applause. "She's just a flash in the pan, folks. A nobody playing dress-up." The crowd roared again, phones angled for the perfect shot, their screens glowing with Zara's humiliation. Clara's eyes darted to the floor, shame flickering, while Amir leaned forward, his voice a low murmur to the player beside him. "She's not breaking. Watch her." Zara's fingers brushed her hair, smoothing the disrupted strands with deliberate grace. Each movement was a rebellion, a refusal to bow. Her dress, though stained with a faint martini splash, clung to her like armor, its cream hue glowing under the neon. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, but her gaze held Lila's, a silent promise that this game was far from over. The crowd's laughter echoed, but cracks appeared. Some faces turned uneasy, sensing the shift. Lila's smirk wavered, just for a heartbeat, as Zara's poise began to steal the spotlight. In that moment, Zara's mind flashed to a memory. A boardroom years ago, where a sneering executive dismissed her as just a token hire. She'd swallowed the sting then, turned it to steel, and built Kane Corp from nothing. This was no different. Lila's cruelty was loud, but Zara's power was louder, waiting in the wings. She reached for her clutch, her fingers grazing the phone inside, a weapon more potent than any card on the table. The golden ace pulsed around her, oblivious to the storm she was about to unleash. Lila thought she'd won the round, but Zara was playing a different game, one where empires fell with a single move. Zara Kane's fingers lingered on the strands of her hair, the faint ache in her scalp a pulsing reminder of Lila Voss's venom. The Golden Ace Casino's neon glow bathed her cream bodycon dress, its square neckline and drawstring center catching flecks of pink light, making her a beacon of defiance amidst the jeering crowd. Her dark eyes, sharp as a blade, held Lila's gaze, unyielding, as if daring her to strike again. The laughter from the poker table's onlookers still echoed, but it was thinner now, frayed by the weight of Zara's silence. She stood like a statue carved from obsidian, her long hair swaying slightly as she adjusted her posture, the sensual cut of her dress amplifying her quiet power. Lila, her white satin dress shimmering like a predator's scales, sensed the shift and bristled. She couldn't let this nobody steal her stage. "What's the matter, lucky girl?" she sneered, her voice a whip cracking through the jazz-tinged air. "Too stunned to speak? Or do you know your place now?" She grabbed a fresh martini from a passing tray, held by Clarabelle, whose hands trembled as she avoided Zara's eyes. Lila tilted the glass, letting the liquid splash onto Zara's dress, the clear liquor blooming into a dark stain across the cream fabric. The crowd roared, phones flashing anew, their cruel delight reigniting. "Oops," Lila mocked, her lips curling. "Guess your little outfit's ruined, just like your chances here." Zara's breath caught, but her face remained a mask of steel. She brushed the stain with a slow, deliberate hand, each movement a silent rebuke. The crowd's laughter stung, but she'd faced worse. Boardrooms where her every word was dissected, dismissed as luck. She'd built Kane Corp on the bones of those doubts, and Lila's tantrum was just another hurdle. Her fingers slipped into her clutch, grazing her phone, its sleek surface a promise of retribution. She didn't need to shout. Her power was in precision, and the game was only beginning. Amir Jackson leaned back in his chair, his dark suit blending with the shadows of the poker table. His sly grin faded, replaced by a calculating stare as he watched Zara's restraint. "She's not folding," he murmured to the player beside him, a grizzled casino veteran named Victor Vic Malone, 55, whose weathered hands clutched a stack of chips. Vic's eyes narrowed, his gravelly voice low. "Girl's got ice in her veins. Lila's playing with fire." Amir nodded, his fingers tapping his phone, already sensing a shift in the room's power. Clara, still clutching her tray, hovered near the table, her heart pounding. She'd seen Lila's cruelty before. Waitresses mocked, dealers fired on whims. But Zara's poise unnerved her. Clara's own dreams of escaping this gilded cage flickered as she watched Zara, a woman who seemed to bend the world to her will. Yet fear of the Voss family kept her silent, her eyes darting to the security guards, their hands on earpieces watching Zara like hawks. Lila, emboldened by the crowd's cheers, circled the table like a shark. "You think you're one of us?" she taunted, her voice rising to drown the fading jazz. "You're a fluke, Zara Kane, a nobody in a borrowed dress, crashing my father's empire." She leaned in, her breath hot with gin and malice, and grabbed Zara's hair again, yanking it once, twice, the motion sharp and cruel. The crowd gasped, some laughing, others shifting uneasily. A woman in a sequined gown whispered, "She's gone too far," but her companion shushed her, phone still recording. Zara's hand shot to the table's edge, steadying herself as pain flared through her scalp. Her heart thundered, but her face betrayed nothing. She'd learned long ago that rage was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she let Lila's words wash over her, each insult a brick in the wall of her resolve. Her fingers closed around her phone, and with a subtle flick, she sent a coded message to her team at Kane Corp. "Analyze Voss Holdings. Prepare to pull 6B. Initiate short." The command was a spark, and the fire was coming. Amir caught the motion, his eyes sharpening. He leaned toward Vic, voice barely audible. "She's not just sitting there. She's planning something big." Vic chuckled, his weathered face creasing. "Hope Voss has a good lawyer." Across the room, Clara's tray wobbled as she overheard a security guard mutter into his earpiece, "Keep an eye on Kane. She's trouble." Clara's gaze flicked to Zara, a flicker of hope daring to bloom. Maybe this woman could topple the untouchable Voss dynasty. Lila, oblivious to the undercurrents, tossed her hair and raised her glass. "To the lucky girl who thought she could play," she declared, her entourage clapping like trained seals. But the crowd's energy was splintering. Some still laughed, but others, like the woman in sequins, lowered their phones, their faces uneasy. Zara's silence was a mirror, reflecting their complicity, and it stung. She straightened, her cream dress catching the neon light, the martini stain a badge of survival. Her eyes met Lila's, and for a moment, the heiress faltered, her smirk twitching. Zara's mind raced, not with anger, but with strategy. She'd faced rooms like this, skeptics who saw her skin, her youth, and assumed she was less. Each time she'd turned their doubts into dust, building an empire that moved markets with a whisper. Lila's cruelty was loud, but Zara's power was deafening, and it was about to roar. She slid her phone back into her clutch, her fingers steady, her heart a metronome of resolve. The Golden Ace's lights pulsed, but they no longer mocked her. They heralded the storm she would unleash. Zara Kane stood unwavering, her cream bodycon dress clinging to her like a second skin, the martini stain a dark bloom across its square neckline. The Golden Ace Casino's neon haze pulsed around her, but her dark eyes burned brighter, fixed on Lila Voss with a quiet ferocity that made the heiress's smirk flicker. The laughter from the crowd, once a roaring tide, now ebbed into uneven murmurs, as if the room itself sensed the shift. Zara's silence wasn't surrender. It was a gathering storm, and the coded message she'd sent to her team at Kane Corp was its first thunderclap. Her fingers rested lightly on her clutch, the phone inside a ticking bomb, primed to detonate the empire Lila so arrogantly defended. Lila, her white satin dress catching the pink and blue lights like a fractured prism, tossed her blonde hair and forced a laugh, desperate to reclaim the stage. "What's this, Zara?" she taunted, her voice sharp but strained. "Think you can stare me down? You're nothing here, just a dressed-up nobody who got lucky." She stepped closer, her heels snapping against the marble, and raised her empty martini glass like a scepter. "Deal her out," she snapped at the dealer, a nervous young man named Tommy, whose hands froze mid-shuffle. "She's done playing at my father's table." The crowd stirred, some cheering, others hesitating, their phones lowering as Zara's poise began to unravel their certainty. Amir Jackson, his dark suit a shadow against the table, leaned toward Vic Malone, his voice a low rumble. "She's not folding, Vic. Lila's digging her own grave." Vic, his weathered face creased with a knowing grin, nodded, his eyes on Zara. "Kid's got a royal flush up her sleeve. Mark my words. Their whispers spread, a ripple of doubt among the onlookers. Clara Bell, still clutching her tray, caught Zara's gaze for a fleeting moment, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and admiration. Clara had seen the Voss family crush dreams before, but Zara's unyielding calm was something new, a force that made her question her own loyalty. Zara's mind was a steel trap, calculating. She'd sent the signal, $6 billion to be pulled from Voss's financial arteries, paired with a short-selling blitz to gut their stock. Kane Corp's team was already moving, their algorithms slicing through markets like a scalpel. A memory flickered. A late-night coding session in her tiny apartment, years ago, when a mentor sneered, "You're good, Zara, but you'll never break the glass ceiling." She'd proved him wrong, building an empire on code and cunning. Lila's cruelty was just another ceiling, and Zara was ready to shatter it. The dealer, Tommy, stammered, "Miss Voss, I can't just—" Lila cut him off, slamming her glass on the table, the crack echoing like a gunshot. "Do it, or you're out of a job," she hissed. Tommy's hands shook, cards slipping, but Zara raised a hand, her voice low and steady. "Let her have her moment." The words landed like a velvet blade, silencing the table. The crowd hushed, sensing a shift, as a massive screen above the bar, usually flashing poker odds, flickered with a red alert. Voss Group stock down 8%. Gas rippled through the room, heads turning, phones buzzing. Amir's eyes widened, his fingers tapping his phone to check the markets. "She's moving money," he muttered to Vic, who chuckled, leaning back. "Told you, fire." Clara, overhearing, felt her pulse race. She glanced at the security guards, their earpieces crackling with urgent voices, one muttering, "Boss says watch Kane, she's behind this." Clara's tray wobbled, a single glass teetering, her loyalty to the Vosses fraying as she watched Zara's unshakable presence command the room. Lila, oblivious to the screen, spun to the crowd, her voice shrill. "She's bluffing. My father owns this city." But her words faltered as a woman in a sequined gown, Sophia Grant, 45, a hedge fund manager, whispered to her companion, "That's no bluff. Voss is bleeding." Sophia's eyes met Zara's, a nod of respect passing between them. The crowd's laughter was gone now, replaced by a tense hum, like the air before a lightning strike. Lila's entourage, sensing the tide turning, shifted uncomfortably, their phones dipping. Zara's fingers brushed her pearl necklace, a gift from her late mother, a reminder of resilience forged in harder battles than this. She let Lila's taunts slide off her, each word fueling her resolve. The screen flashed again. Voss Group down 12%. A pit boss, a burly man named Carl, stormed from the mezzanine, barking into his radio, "Lock the high roller accounts." The crowd parted as he approached, his face pale, eyes darting to Zara. She met his gaze, unflinching, her cream dress glowing like a beacon, the martini stain a battle scar she wore with pride. Lila, catching the screen's glow, froze, her smirk collapsing. "What's happening?" she demanded, voice cracking, but no one answered. Clara, trembling, stepped closer, her voice a whisper. "Miss Kane, are you doing this?" Zara didn't respond, but her eyes softened for a moment, acknowledging Clara's courage. The jazz quartet faltered, a saxophone note trailing off, as the casino's pulse quickened. Zara's silence was no longer just defiance. It was power, reshaping the room, the markets, the very air. Lila's empire was cracking, and Zara was only getting started. Zara Kane stood like a lighthouse in a storm, her cream bodycon dress glowing under the Golden Ace Casino's flickering neon, the martini stain a defiant badge on its square neckline. Her long hair, still sleek despite Lila's assault, framed her unyielding poise as the massive screen above flashed a new alert. Voss Group stock down 20%. The words were a guillotine, slicing through the casino's electric hum. The crowd, once a jeering mob, now buzzed with unease, their phones no longer recording, but frantically checking market apps. Zara's dark eyes, sharp and steady, held the room captive, her silence louder than the chaos erupting around her. She'd lit the fuse and the explosion was coming. Lila Voss, her white satin dress now creased with desperation, clutched the edge of the poker table, her knuckles pale. "This is nothing," she shouted, her voice shrill, cracking like thin ice. "My father's empire can't be touched by some nobody's stunt." But her words drowned in the growing din. Dealers whispering, players abandoning their chips, and the jazz quartet's final notes fading into discord. She spun toward Tommy, the trembling dealer, snapping, "Keep the game going. She's bluffing." Tommy's hands fumbled, cards slipping, his eyes darting to Zara as if she held the real deck. Amir Jackson, his sly grin replaced by a steely focus, tapped his phone, tracking the plummeting Voss stock. He leaned toward Vic Malone, whose weathered face split into a grin. "She's not just playing, Vic," Amir murmured. "She's rewriting the rules." Vic nodded, his gravelly chuckle cutting through the tension. "Voss built this house on sand, and she's the tide." Their words, though quiet, carried, and a few players glanced at Zara, their earlier mockery replaced by wary respect. Sophia Grant, the hedge fund manager, stood near the bar, her sequined gown catching the light as she typed furiously, redirecting her investments away from Voss. "Kane's the real power here," she whispered to her companion, her voice firm with conviction. Clara Bell, her tray now abandoned on a side table, hovered near the chaos, her heart racing. She'd spent years bowing to the Voss family's whims, but Zara's unshakable calm stirred something in her, a longing to break free. She caught Carl, the pit boss, storming toward the table, his radio crackling with panicked orders. "Freeze all accounts. Voss says Kane's behind it." Clara's eyes flicked to Zara, who stood serene, her pearl necklace glinting as she adjusted her posture. The drawstring at her dress's chest, a subtle reminder of her elegance amidst the storm. Clara whispered to herself, "She's going to burn this place down." Zara's mind was a chessboard, each move calculated. Her team at Kane Corp was executing her orders, pulling $6 billion from Voss's financial lifelines and flooding the market with short sells. The screen flashed again. "Voss Group down 30%. Gasps erupted, and a player in a tailored suit stood shouting, "My portfolio's tanking." The crowd's unease turned to panic, phones buzzing with alerts, their earlier cruelty now a bitter aftertaste. Zara's silence was a weapon, cutting through Lila's bravado, exposing the fragility of her inherited power. Lila, sensing her grip slipping, lunged forward, her voice a desperate screech. "You think you're clever, Zara? This is my father's kingdom. You're nothing." She reached for Zara's hair again, but Zara stepped aside, swift and graceful, her dress shimmering as she moved. The crowd gasped, some murmuring, "She dodged her." Lila stumbled, her heels skidding on the marble, her face flushing with rage. "Security!" she yelled, pointing at Zara. "Get her out!" Carl hesitated, his hand on his earpiece as a new voice crackled through. "Boss says hold off. We're losing too much." Lila's eyes widened, betrayal flickering as she realized even her father's men were faltering. Amir stood, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Lila, you're out of your depth." The words landed like a slap, and Sophia nodded, stepping forward. "Kane's not the one who needs to leave," she said, her tone icy. The crowd parted, their phones now capturing Lila's unraveling instead of Zara's pain. Clara, emboldened, took a step closer, her voice trembling but clear. "Miss Kane, I'm sorry." Zara's eyes softened for a heartbeat, acknowledging Clara's courage, but her focus returned to Lila, a silent promise of reckoning. A memory surfaced, Zara at 25, pitching to a room of skeptical investors who laughed at her fintech startup. "Too young, too different," they'd said. She'd turned their scorn into fuel, building Kane Corp into a titan. Lila's tantrum was just another echo of that fight, and Zara was ready. Her fingers grazed her clutch, confirming her team's update. Funds pulled, shorts active, Voss collapsing. The screen flashed. Voss Group down 40%. The casino's pulse stuttered, chips untouched, dealers frozen, as the empire Lila boasted of began to crumble under Zara's silent command. Lila, her face a mask of panic, grabbed Tommy's arm. "Deal the cards, now!" But Tommy shook his head, stepping back. "It's over, Miss Voss," he whispered. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some whispering, "Who is she?" Vic laughed, slapping the table. "She's the one who's been winning all along." Zara stood taller, her cream dress a beacon, the stain a testament to her endurance. The Golden Ace was no longer Lila's stage. It was Zara's, and the final act was coming. Zara Kane stood as a pillar of fire in the Golden Ace Casino's unraveling chaos. Her cream bodycon dress glowing under the flickering neon, the martini stain a proud scar across its square neckline. Her long hair, still sleek despite Layla's assault, framed her like a crown, her dark eyes blazing with a quiet fury that silenced the room's fading jeers. The massive screen above flashed a new alert. Voss Group stock down 50%, liquidity crisis imminent. The words were a death knell, reverberating through the crowd, who now clutched their phones in panic, their earlier mockery replaced by dread. Zara's $6 billion strike had hit its mark, and the empire Lila Voss had boasted of was crumbling before their eyes. Lila, her white satin dress now clinging like a wilted flag, staggered back from the poker table, her face ashen. "This can't be happening," she whispered, her voice a broken thread, barely audible over the hum of frantic whispers and buzzing phones. She spun toward Carl, the pit boss, her eyes wild. "Do something! My father owns this place!" Carl, his burly frame tense, shook his head, his radio crackling with desperate orders. "All tables frozen. Voss says we're hemorrhaging cash." Lila's hands trembled, her empty martini glass slipping to the marble floor, shattering into a glittering spray that mirrored her fracturing confidence. Amir Jackson, his dark suit sharp against the chaos, stood, his phone alight with market data. "She's done it," he said to Vic Malone, his voice low but awed. $6 billion, pulled in minutes. Vic's weathered grin widened, his eyes glinting as he watched Zara. "That's not a player, Amir. That's a goddamn queen." Their words carried, drawing nods from nearby players, their earlier laughter now a bitter memory. Sophia Grant, her sequined gown shimmering, typed furiously, diverting her hedge fund's assets from Voss's sinking ship. "Kane's rewriting history tonight," she murmured, her companion nodding, eyes fixed on Zara. Clara Bell, her tray long abandoned, stood frozen near the bar, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and exhilaration. She'd seen the Voss family crush dreams, but Zara's calm was a revelation, a beacon for someone trapped in their shadow. Clara's eyes darted to Tommy, the dealer who stood rooted, cards untouched, his face pale as he whispered, "She's bankrupting them." A new figure emerged from the crowd, Elena Voss, 50, Lila's mother and Victor's wife, her emerald dress stark against her grim expression. "Lila, stop this," she hissed, grabbing her daughter's arm. "You've gone too far." But Lila yanked free, her voice a shriek. "She's nothing. A fraud." Zara's fingers brushed her pearl necklace, its weight grounding her as the screen flashed again. Voss Group down 60%. Casinos closing. The casino's pulse stuttered. Dealers abandoned their posts, chips lay scattered, and the jazz quartet's absence left only the sound of panic. Zara's mind was a fortress, her team at Kane Corp executing her orders with surgical precision. $6 billion drained from Voss's accounts, short sells flooding the market. A memory flickered, her first major deal, when a rival mocked her as just a coder with dreams too big. She'd turned his company to dust. Lila was no different. The crowd was no longer Lila's. Players stepped back, their phones now sharing news of Voss's collapse, not Zara's pain. Sophia approached Zara, her voice steady. "You've got my funds backing, Kane. Name your terms." Amir followed, offering a handshake. "We're with you." Vic clapped, his laugh booming. "Raise a glass to the woman who broke the house." The cheers were tentative at first, then grew, a tide turning against Lila. Clara, emboldened, stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Miss Kane, I believe in you." Zara's eyes softened, a flicker of warmth, but her focus remained razor-sharp. Lila's scream cut through the noise. "You can't do this!" She lunged toward Zara, but Carl caught her arm, his voice low. "Enough, Lila. It's over." She wrenched free, her eyes darting to the screen, now blazing. Voss Group insolvent. Her knees buckled, and Elena steadied her, her face a mask of resignation. "You brought this on us," Elena whispered, her voice heavy with regret. The crowd parted, their phones capturing Lila's fall, not Zara's triumph. A young player posted online, Zara Kane just ended Voss, shock golden ace fall. Zara stood taller, her cream dress aflame in the neon haze, its ruched sleeves catching the light as she moved. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was a proclamation, her silence a verdict. Lila's empire was collapsing, and Zara had orchestrated every note. Her fingers grazed her clutch, a final message from her team confirming, funds secured. Voss finished. The casino's lights flickered, as if bowing to her will. Lila's sobs echoed, but they were drowned by the crowd's murmurs, now chanting Zara's name. The game wasn't over, but Zara was already rewriting the rules. Zara Kane stood as a beacon of triumph, her cream bodycon dress a defiant flame under the Golden Ace Casino's dimming neon. The martini stain a testament to her endurance. Her long hair flowed like a dark river, framing her unyielding gaze as the crowd's murmurs swelled into a reverent hum, chanting her name. The massive screen above, once a herald of Voss Group's dominance, now blazed with finality. Voss Group bankrupt. Casinos shuttered. The words hung like smoke, curling through the air as the casino's pulse faltered. Chips untouched, tables empty, the jazz quartet long gone. Zara's $6 billion strike had raised Lila Voss's empire, and the wreckage was hers to command. Lila, her white satin dress sagging like a fallen banner, slumped against the poker table, her blonde hair a tangled veil over her tear-streaked face. "This isn't real," she choked, her voice a fragile whisper, drowned by the buzz of phones and the shuffle of retreating players. She clutched at Elena Voss, her mother, whose emerald dress seemed to wilt in the neon haze. "Fix this, mother," Lila pleaded, but Elena's eyes were cold, her grip on Lila's arm more restraint than comfort. "You did this," Elena said, her voice low, cutting. "You mocked the wrong woman." The crowd watched, their phones now capturing Lila's ruin, the hashtag Golden Ace Fall spreading like wildfire. Amir Jackson, his dark suit sharp against the chaos, stepped closer to Zara, his voice steady. "You've changed the game, Kane. My firm's with you." His handshake was firm, a seal of alliance, his eyes gleaming with respect. Vic Malone, leaning on the table, his weathered hands stacking chips absent-mindedly, laughed gruffly. "Hell of a play, kid. Voss never saw it coming." Sophia Grant, her sequined gown catching the fading light, approached, her phone alight with messages redirecting her fund's investments. "You're the future, Zara," she said, her tone unwavering. "Let's talk tomorrow." Clara Bell, trembling at the edge of the crowd, felt her heart race. She'd spent years serving the Vosses, swallowing their arrogance, but Zara's victory was a spark in her chest. She stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Miss Kane, I want to be like you." Zara's eyes softened, a fleeting warmth breaking her stoic mask, but she said nothing, her silence a nod to Clara's courage. Tommy, the dealer, stood frozen, his hands still clutching cards, his eyes darting to Carl, the pit boss, who barked into his radio. "No one leaves until we stabilize." But his voice cracked, betraying the futility of his orders. Zara's mind was a fortress, her strategy unfolding like a master's gambit. Kane Corp's team had drained Voss's accounts and shorted their stock to oblivion, a move honed in late-night war rooms where she'd outwitted skeptics who saw only her skin, not her brilliance. A memory surfaced, her mother braiding her hair as a child, whispering, "They'll try to break you, Zara, but you're stronger than their hate." That strength anchored her now, her pearl necklace a talisman as she faced the wreckage she'd wrought. The casino's neon flickered, as if mourning its own fall, but Zara stood unshaken, her cream dress a symbol of resilience. Lila, her sobs now a low keening, pushed past Elena, staggering toward Zara. "You cheated!" she screamed, her voice raw, desperate. "You can't just destroy us!" The crowd hushed, their eyes darting between the women, sensing a showdown. Zara tilted her head, her voice low, deliberate, cutting through the silence like a blade. "You thought your cruelty was power, Lila. But power doesn't scream. It moves." The words landed like a gavel, and Lila flinched, her hands clawing at the air as if to grasp her lost empire. Elena pulled her back, whispering, Enough. But Lila's eyes burned with defiance, even as tears fell. Sophia's phone buzzed with a new alert. Victor Voss steps down as CEO. Gasps rippled through the crowd, players whispering, "It's over." Vic clapped slowly, his laugh echoing. "Checkmate, Voss." Amir nodded, already drafting a proposal for Zara, while Clara, emboldened, slipped away to the staff room, her mind racing with thoughts of leaving the Golden Ace for good. Carl, defeated, lowered his radio, his eyes meeting Zara's for a moment, a grudging respect flickering before he turned away. The crowd's allegiance had shifted, their chants of Zara growing louder, a tide washing over Lila's broken cries. A young woman in a velvet dress posted online, "Zara Kane just burned Voss to the ground. Kyurjana, Queen of Vegas." The screen above flickered, now dark, its final message etched in the crowd's minds. Zara adjusted her dress, the ruched sleeves catching the last of the neon's glow, her long hair a cascade of defiance. She didn't need to gloat. Her victory was in the silence, in the empire reduced to ash at her feet. Lila's sobs faded, but Zara's presence roared, a promise of the final act to come. Zara Kane stood radiant amidst the Golden Ace Casino's fading glow, her cream body con dress a beacon of defiance, its martini stain a battle scar etched across its square neckline. Her long hair flowed like a dark cascade, catching the last flickers of neon as the crowd's chants of her name swelled into a roaring tide. The screen above, now a silent monument to Voss Group's ruin, loomed over the deserted poker tables, its final message: Voss Group bankrupt, etched into the air like a gravestone. Lila Voss's sobs, once a desperate plea, had dwindled to a broken whimper, her white satin dress clinging to her like a shroud. Zara's silence had reshaped the room, and now her voice would seal the victory. Lila slumped against her mother Elena's arm, her blonde hair a tangled mess, lifted her tear-streaked face. "You can't take everything," she choked, her voice raw, a shadow of its former venom. "This is my father's legacy." She staggered forward, shaking off Elena's grip, her eyes wild with defiance. The crowd hushed, their phones poised, no longer mocking but mesmerized, sensing the final act of a drama they'd never forget. Zara stepped forward, her heels clicking on the marble like a judge's gavel, her dark eyes locking onto Lila's with a calm that cut deeper than any shout. "You thought cruelty was your crown," Zara said, her voice low, resonant, carrying through the silenced casino. "But you built it on sand, Lila. I didn't take your empire. I showed it for what it was." The words landed like thunder, each syllable a hammer striking Lila's fragile pride. The crowd gasped, some nodding, their earlier complicity now a bitter weight. Amir Jackson, his dark suit stark against the chaos, clapped slowly, his grin wide. "That's the checkmate," he said, his voice carrying to Vic Malone, who laughed, his weathered hands slamming the table. "Game over, Voss." Sophia Grant, her sequined gown shimmering, stepped closer, her phone buzzing with messages from investors begging to align with Kane Corp. "You've redefined power, Zara," she said, her tone reverent, her eyes meeting Zara's with a nod of alliance. Clara Bell, trembling at the crowd's edge, felt her heart soar. She'd spent years bowing to the Vosses, but Zara's words were a key unlocking her own courage. "I'm done with them," Clara whispered, stepping forward, her voice stronger. "Miss Kane, you're incredible." Zara's gaze softened, a flicker of warmth, but her focus remained on Lila, unwavering. Elena Voss, her emerald dress, a stark contrast to her grim expression, pulled Lila back, her voice sharp. "You've humiliated us enough, Lila. Stop." But Lila shoved her away, her eyes blazing with a final spark of defiance. "She's a fraud," she screamed, pointing at Zara, her finger trembling. "She doesn't belong here." The accusation hung, hollow, as the crowd turned away, their phones now sharing posts of Zara's triumph. "Kane ends Voss, Rari Queen of Vegas." Tommy, the dealer, shook his head, his cards abandoned, whispering to a colleague, "She's the real deal." Even Carl, the pit boss, lowered his radio, his face etched with defeat, his loyalty to Voss crumbling. Zara's mind flashed to a memory, her first pitch to a venture capitalist who'd laughed, "A black woman in fintech? Good luck." She'd turned his scorn into fuel, building Kane Corp into a titan that moved markets. Lila's desperation was just another echo of that fight, and Zara was done letting it define her. She adjusted her pearl necklace, its weight a reminder of her mother's words. "You're enough, Zara. Always." Her cream dress, stained but radiant, hugged her curves, its ruched sleeves catching the neon's last glow. She was no longer the prey, she was the queen, and the room knew it. "Lila," Zara said, her voice steady, cutting through the murmurs. "You thought you could break me, but I've been forged in fires you'll never understand." The crowd leaned in, breathless, as Lila's face crumpled, her defiance snuffed out. Elena stepped forward, her voice low. "Enough, Zara. You've won." But Zara shook her head, her eyes never leaving Lila. "This isn't about winning. It's about truth." The words were a verdict, final and unyielding, and the crowd erupted in applause, their chants of "Zara" shaking the chandeliers. Vic raised a glass, his gravelly voice booming. "To the woman who broke the house!" Amir joined, his handshake firm, while Sophia tweeted, "Zara Kane just redrew the Vegas skyline." Clara, tears in her eyes, slipped into the staff room, drafting a resignation letter inspired by Zara's strength. A young player posted, "Kane's the future. Voss is history." The casino's neon flickered, dimming as if in surrender, the empty tables a testament to Zara's power. Lila, alone now, sank to her knees, her sobs lost in the crowd's roar. Zara turned, her dress aflame, ready to claim her final moment. Zara Kane's final words still echoed through the Golden Ace Casino, her cream bodycon dress a radiant emblem of victory, its martini stain a badge of battles won. Her long hair swayed like a dark curtain, catching the dimming neon as she turned from Lila Voss, whose crumpled form knelt amidst the wreckage of her father's empire. The crowd's chants of Zara reverberated, a hymn to her triumph, as the casino's once vibrant pulse slowed to a mournful hum. Empty poker tables and scattered chips lay like ruins. The massive screen above dark, its silence a testament to Voss Group's fall. Zara's $6 billion strike had not just broken an empire, it had crowned her queen, and now she would walk away on her terms. Lila, her white satin dress stained and sagging, clutched the marble floor, her sobs a faint echo in the crowd's roar. Elena Voss stood over her emerald gown stark against her grim face, her voice a low hiss. "Get up, Lila. You've lost everything." Lila's tear-streaked eyes lifted, meeting Zara's departing figure, but no words came. Her defiance had shattered. The crowd, once her cheering mob, now turned away, their phones sharing posts of Zara's victory. "Kane topples Voss, Nwakshus a queen of Vegas." A young woman in velvet tweeted, "Zara Kane didn't just win, she rewrote the game." The air thrummed with reverence, not mockery, as Zara's presence lingered like a storm's afterglow. Amir Jackson approached, his dark suit crisp, his handshake firm. "Zara, you've got my firm for life," he said, his grin wide but respectful. "Let's build something bigger." Vic Malone, leaning on a deserted table, raised a glass, his gravelly laugh booming. "To the woman who burned the house down." Sophia Grant, her sequined gown glinting, added, "My fund's ready to back you, Kane. Name the price." Their alliance was a seal on Zara's victory, their words a chorus amplifying her ascent. Clara Bell, standing at the crowd's edge, wiped tears from her eyes, her resignation letter already drafted. "I'm free now," she whispered, inspired by Zara's unbreakable spirit. Tommy, the dealer, gathered his cards, his hands steady now, his voice soft. "She's a legend," he told a colleague, who nodded, posting online. "Saw Zara Kane and Voss tonight. Unreal." Even Carl, the pit boss, stood silent, his radio quiet, his loyalty to Voss dissolved in the face of Zara's power. He met her gaze as she passed, a grudging nod his only offering. The crowd parted, their applause swelling, some bowing their heads as if to royalty. Zara's cream dress, its ruched sleeves catching the last neon flickers, moved with her like liquid fire, her long hair a banner of resilience. Zara's steps were measured, each click of her heels a final note in the symphony she'd composed. Her mind drifted to a memory. Her mother years ago, handing her the pearl necklace she now wore, saying, "They'll try to dim your light, Zara, but you shine brighter." That light burned now, undimmed by Lila's cruelty, fueled by the battles she'd fought to build Kane Corp. She'd faced rooms of skeptics, their whispers of too young, too different, echoing Lila's taunts. But each had fallen to her will. This victory was no different, just louder, etched in the ashes of a fallen empire. Outside, the Las Vegas night enveloped her, the strip's lights a glittering sea that seemed to bow in her wake. Zara paused on the casino's grand steps, the cool air kissing her skin, her cream dress glowing under the city's glow. She inhaled deeply, her pearl necklace a steady weight, her heart calm. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, about proving her worth in a world that tried to break her. Her phone buzzed, a message from her team. Voss assets liquidated. Kane Corp positioned for global lead. She smiled, not smugly, but with a quiet certainty, and typed back, "Next move. Now." Clara slipped out behind her, clutching a crumpled resignation note. "Miss Kane," she called, voice trembling but bold. "Can I work for you?" Zara turned, her eyes warm, and nodded. "Send me your resume tomorrow." Clara's face lit up, a new path opening. Amir and Sophia followed, their voices buzzing with plans, while Vic lingered inside, regaling players with Zara's tale. Posts flooded online. Zara Kane, Vegas's new titan. The Golden Ace stood silent behind her, its neon faded, its legacy dust. Lila remained inside, curled against Elena, her sobs drowned by the crowd's fading cheers. Elena's voice was cold. "You played a losing hand, Lila." The heiress had no response, her empire gone, her name a hashtag of failure. Zara, standing tall, looked to the horizon, where the strip's lights promised new battles, new triumphs. She was no longer just a CEO, she was a force, a queen who'd turned cruelty into power. The world would remember her name, not for the pain she endured, but for the empire she felled with a single, silent strike. Zara Kane's triumph in the Golden Ace Casino is more than a story. It's a testament to resilience, a spark for those who face their own battles against cruelty. What did her victory stir in you? Was it her unyielding silence, her calculated strike, or the way she turned pain into power? Share your thoughts below. Your voice matters. Thank you for joining us in this electrifying tale of justice, for standing with Zara as she rewrote the rules. Stay tuned for more stories of unbreakable spirits and empires toppled. Until then, keep shining, and we'll meet again in the next saga.